friends. Welcome to Sky House Herbs podcast. I'm Ashley Ellenvoss, a clinical herbalist, and in this space, I share my knowledge and experience with plant medicine to help you on your own journey of healing and transformation. Join me in exploring the ancient wisdom of plant spirit medicine and how it can be used to heal the body, mind, and spirit. We'll talk to experts in the field and share stories from people who've been transformed by powerful plant allies. New episodes are released each Monday, so please subscribe. And now, let's explore this mystical world of plant medicine together. Hey everyone, welcome in. Today we'll be talking about plants and dancing. And do plants dance? That was a question that came to me today as I was reflecting on my experience that I just had in Las Vegas at the Sphere, which is this huge stadium that has these LED screens. It's like a 3D dome visual experience. And my husband and I went to see Dead and Company, which is the former members of the Grateful Dead. So in this video today, I'm going to be sharing my experience of Vegas, of seeing this amazing concert, and some of the insights and questions that came up for me around our bodies and dancing and collective experience. And then along with it, I'm going to pair some research about plants and hopefully make some cool connections between the similarities of how plants respond to music and how we need music. So before we dive in, if you wouldn't mind, please click the subscribe button. I can't believe how many followers, subscribers we have now. I am just, oh my gosh, thank you all so much. It means so much to me to see my numbers go up. You know, I think as a YouTuber and as a podcaster, I make these videos, in the comfort of my own home. And it's hard to know what kind of impact is my work having. And so when I see more people subscribing, when I see your thumbs up and likes, and I see your comments and I receive your emails, I just want you to know that it matters, that I notice it and I see it and I thank you. So let's talk about Vegas first. Cause have you been to Vegas? It was my first time ever going to Vegas. And, it was what I expected. It was loud, bright. There were bad choices being made left and right. Things I hadn't considered as being an option to wear were out there being worn. There were bachelorette parties. There were just people laying on the ground. There was all of the things. And then there were really nice, kind of businessy looking people at the tables, being moderate, looking like they were having a good time, very serious, right? So it was kind of a weird juxtaposition for me because, well, number one, I don't like to gamble. I find it to be, I get really stressed out. I don't like losing money. I'm a double Taurus. So for me, I'll spend money. I like to spend, but I don't like to gamble it. Cause if I'm not going to get something from it, I don't know. It doesn't do it for me. I know for some people it's really fun, but for me, it's very stressful. So there's this weird juxtaposition between this Vegas scene and culture, and then the music that I've grown up with that feeds me, that's about community and mindfulness and environmental protection and, tending one another and, being aware of the government and social structures that actually impede our creative expression. Right. So there was all of that, this counterculture. And then there's the gambling world, and these two worlds collided over this weekend for my husband and I. And it was very bizarre. I do think, I've been listening to the Grateful Dead since maybe 91 or 92. And I've seen a few concerts when they were the original Grateful Dead when I was in high school. And then I followed Further Tour and Phil and Friends and Fish and did that whole thing for 10 years. So this whole world is very familiar to me, but it was really interesting to see, what happens when you put a bunch of hippies in Vegas. I saw different choices being made, and it was really interesting. I guess that has nothing to do with music and dancing. I guess it kind of does. But what I was really what the thing that impacted me the most from this weekend trip was being in this huge magical dome with the music that was written from this very deep creative well of insight from Robert Hunter, who was just a brilliant poet and writer, along with lyrics written by Jerry Garcia and Bob Weir, and even Brent Midland wrote some songs, and Phil wrote some songs. Like all of the songs of that band that are so rich and filled with meaning. I mean, I think a lot of people might not, if you don't listen to the Grateful Dead, what you might not realize is that every song has like hidden wisdom. Like there's a story, and you're being brought on a journey through a song. Their songs are very long, and there's always some unexpected creative turn that you would not have seen coming, but is part of the experience of the song. And then there's always lines in there that you can pluck out and hold in your pocket. One man gathers what another man spills, or I mean, there's so many, but I I was in this immersive experience, and I was just I love dancing. I've always loved dancing, like creative free flow dancing. I don't know steps, like I can't salsa or waltz, but I can spin and I can dance. And so for 2 nights of those concerts, I danced hard. And like being in my mid 40s, like I didn't feel like mid 40s. I felt like I was back in my 20-year-old body, spinning, smiling, just, I mean, like in my soul body, not in my aging body, if you know what I mean. And as I was looking around and being in this experience that is both familiar and new, I just was thinking of what a universal language dance is, and how cultures all over the world get together and they dance. They dance to their own cultural music. If you go to an Indian wedding, there's certain songs everyone knows the moves to. Same thing, even American weddings, we've got chicken dance and I don't know, those weird ones, but there's like these cultural songs and this cultural music that everyone can dance to. And with the Grateful Dead, it's not like there's not like a Grateful Dead dance, like everyone does their own thing, but there is a sphere of understanding and togetherness that everyone's there to just feel the music and let the music play. So as I was like, experiencing, and just one of the things that was really interesting that I wrote down in my journal as like a takeaway was, in the beginning of a show, people are a little more reserved, and you're dancing, but like, people are kind of feeling out the scene. And I would notice that as one person stepped into their dance and they started like really feeling the music, then another person would like see that, and then they would start to let themselves feel the music, and it was like popcorn until this entire section that we were standing in, everyone was feeling the music, because everyone gave each other permission to feel and to dance and to express and to be creative and to not be to have what is it, not self-confidence, to feel like people were watching them, or to feel, I don't know why I'm totally spacing on this word. But yeah, to feel self-conscious, that's the word. Like nobody was feeling self-conscious. Everyone was just feeling conscious of themselves. And that's great. And so there was like this like, you could see it almost like a network of um, unspoken permission being given within the crowd. And it happened not just in one pocket. It was like there were pockets all over the stadium or the sphere where, somebody would really start going, and then, you just start to see it spread. And I was noticing, especially with women, that when there would be like, I like to stay on the left side of stage. That's where all the spinners are. And so like I like to spin. That's like my jam. I like to spin and like lose myself in the music and kind of go into altered states upon altered states, to kind of just go into a place of like flow, and it's self-awareness, but it's also being unaware of self and absorbed in the space around you. And I was like, I wonder if plants do this too. So I had that thought, and I did some cool research I'll share with you in a minute. But one of the things I noticed with women in particular was that as we, as us women started letting go and dancing, and I don't know, I mean, I'm sure the men were too, but I wasn't really paying attention to them. But it was like we would catch each other's eyes and smile and like a recognition of each other. Like, I see you, beautiful, beautiful woman, and you're dancing and you're feeling good and you're happy. Awesome. I am too. And like it sounds so simple, but like I had like tears just running down my face at certain moments, just being like, look at all these beautiful people, and especially these beautiful women who might not otherwise feel affirmed by the women around them to be their wild creative selves. And I just was so touched and moved and affirmed in spite, in that experience, seeing all of these women really yeah, like celebrating each other. And they're, I'm not saying like every single woman was like, yay, like, and who knows, maybe I'm making this entire thing up. And there were some women who were definitely more shy, more reserved, totally fine. I mean, there was this sense that there was this communal acceptance and like joy in each other's happiness. So I wanted to know if plants had a similar thing going on. So I've been using Chat GPT. I'm a little, I might even do a whole video on AI because it's like such the rage. And I just listened to a really interesting podcast on the future, future possible ramifications of AI that we should all be thinking about now. So I might bookmark that for another talk. So tell me if you're interested, if you want to talk about herbalism and AI. I have some thoughts about that. But anyway, I use Chat GPT to ask, like, can you pull up some studies of plants dance? Like, do plants dance? Do they respond to music? What are some studies and research that's been done to show how plants respond to music and how plants respond to one another's growth? Right? Like, how do plants, how do plants communicate that it's okay for other plants of its same species to grow? So I was like, oh, and I found some really cool stuff. So let's start. Um, let's start with the music experiments, right? So I'm sure you've heard about, like, there was a really famous experiment done in the 1970s from Dorothy Relic, and she went to the Colorado Women's College. And so she performed a study that she played different types of music to plants, including classical, jazz, rock, and country. She reported that plants exposed to classical and jazz grew much better and more vigorously compared to those exposed to rock music, which allegedly grew poorly or even died. Um, so she wrote a book called The Sound of Music and Plants. And it's kind of it's interesting to think about, like, well, what is it about country, or what is it about classical music and jazz music that alters plants' growth cycles? And I mean, we know that plants have rhythmic growth cycles that are due to circadian rhythms, due to neurohormonal changes in their physiology. So there's a lot of things that, plants will grow. They do have growth cycles, but the fact that, when exposed to these two types of music, they did really, really well. It makes me think about, there's something coherent, like when we think about coherence, and when two things resonate together, then like in classical music you often have like, it's a very coherent type of music where you have like scales and chords that are working together with one another with multiple layers of intelligence. And so the plants are responding to those rhythms and the sonic vibrations. I mean, really, they don't have ears like we have, so they can't hear the music, but they can feel the music. And with jazz music, I was thinking, well, there is actually a lot of atonal, disharmony, but there's so much creativity. And like, I feel like in jazz music, there's a lot of improv. And like with the Grateful Dead, that's tons of improv. Like They go into long periods, like 10 minutes of just improvisational jamming, where they're, every once in a while they'll miss a note, but more often than not, they are going into places that have never been played before in a group live, and in an experience where the band is actually feeding off of the audience, and then the audience is feeding off from the band. And it's like there's so much happening in those creative zones. So I was thinking with, jazz, what the plants are also experiencing is this like really heightened creativity with these improvisational, spaces in the music. And so, isn't that interesting that the plants really thrive with that? And then if you have like hard rock and roll music, where there, um, yeah, who knows? I don't know. I don't know what kind of rock and roll, because there's some good rock and roll out there. But I think that there's something about flow and having like multiple intelligent um, parts that are sort of like stacked together. Like, if you have just a lot of different things, layers of music happening at the same time. There was a South Korean study on rice plants in 2007 showed that rice plants exposed, hopefully they didn't explode, exposed to classical music showed increased expression of certain genes related to growth. The researchers used microarray technology to analyze gene expression and found that the music influenced the activity of genes involved in cell growth and protein synthesis. So, isn't that interesting? Right? So there was something again here. We see classical music again. A study done in 2013 at the Annamalai University. They did a study on balsam plants. And this was a study done in India. They studied, and balsam plants are native to India. So they studied the effects of different genres of music on balsam plants. They found plants exposed to Indian classical music had significantly higher growth rates and biomass compared to those exposed to silence or other types of music like rock and pop. This really kind of made me go like, oh, interesting. So the plants that are native to a certain region, when exposed to music that grew out of that culture, actually had the highest amount of increased growth patterns. And I was thinking like, oh, isn't that interesting? Like, I feel in my body, and is this true for you too, that music that is part of your culture or your indigenous roots? Like, I love Celtic music. Like, there's something that music does to me that nothing else can. um and so, there's something about our own indigenous musical roots that can affect us, and then also music that's culturally relevant. And I was like, oh, and the plants, isn't it interesting that an Indian balsam is going to have its highest growth with music that was grown out of the same land? So I was like, huh, that's really cool. Another experiment that was done, um, well, actually, these are just different ways that plants respond to music. So, plants respond to music through vibrations caused by sound waves. These mechanical vibrations can influence plant cells and stimulate growth. Sound frequencies, some studies suggest that specific frequencies might affect plant growth more. For example, certain ultrasonic frequencies have been shown to enhance germination rates and growth in some plant species. And then another hypothesis was that music might also play a role in stress reduction. It is hypothesized that music could reduce plant stress levels, similar to how certain environmental conditions can promote plant health. So, how about that? Like, I know for myself, I love to study and have like ambient background music on. It definitely helps me relax. And think about like when you take a yoga class or you go to get a massage, that the music really does affect your physiology. And so why not plants? Why would it not also help plants not to be stressed out? So I was thinking about that in my garden. I was like, oh, I might bring my little speaker down and like put on like really like ambient, gentle, beautiful. Maybe I'll put on some Celtic music. We'll see. I don't know. I think I'm going to just really experiment with this and have fun. Another few interesting facts about specific herbal medicines and how they react to um, how they how they respond to other, they basically to the happiness and health of other plants. This was something I thought, because like remember I was saying how what it seemed like is as one person found their groove and like became really comfortable in their bodies and really started to express themselves creatively through dance, it started catching on to other people. Well, the same thing is true in plants. So there's something called allelopathy, where plants release biochemicals or allelochemicals that affect neighboring plants' growth. And in the case of one plant like Artemisia, they release certain allelochemicals that can inhibit the growth of other plants. But other plants have these root exudates that actually increase the growth of other plants around it. So, for example, St. John's wort, Hypericum perforatum, can use these root exudates to promote growth in neighboring plants by altering the soil microbiome. So isn't that cool that, and I think of St. John's wort, it's like a very cheerful plant. I mean, not only is it a plant that's used for depression and mood dysregulation, and for solar plexus weakness or like self will and self um, steadiness, is that it also yeah, it also lifts others up around it, which I thought that's, it's like an antidepressant in a garden or in a field. It actually helps promote other plants around it. It's like, grow, friend, grow, you got this, keep going, right? Like, isn't that cool? Also, a lot of you might already know about this, but there's a whole world called the mycorrhizal network, which is basically this fungal network in the soil. And if you dig in the soil, you'll see it. It's like these like white kind of interlacing fungal threads. And there is tons of information that travels through the mycorrhizal network. And symbiotic fungi networks improve nutrient and water exchange. And this can help the growth of plants like echinacea when grown in groups. So, for example, if you're going to grow echinacea, I always tell people who ask me questions about growing, like, yeah, echinacea and bee balm like to grow in large groups. Like, don't just plant one echinacea on its own. It doesn't do well. It's actually part of how the whole colony thrives is through this mycorrhizal network, altering the soil and the roots sending out these allelopathic chemicals to like be like, hey brother, what's up? Hey sister, what's up? Oh, do you need a little more carbon? Here, take this. Oh, look, I've got way too much magnesium over here. I'm going to send it your way. So it's like this whole like exchange network that's happening under the soil. And plants do that. And that's basically what happens when we go to concerts or we go to places where there's a bunch of people is, I'm not talking to anyone, maybe like two people, but I am communicating with everyone. And that's so neat that there's all of these nonverbal ways that we communicate with each other, just like the plants are all the time. There's also volatile organic compounds or VOCs in plants such as lavender that enhance growth and stress tolerance in nearby plants. So lavender is going to help. Not only does its volatile oils in the air help us feel more calm, but they actually help the other plants feel less stress in their plant bodies too. So there again, communication. And like, when you're at a concert and you're like, I know that smell, right? There's like, you get an effect too, right? Like you're like, I remember all the times I've smelled that smell, or like, oh, there's some patchouli. I know that smell, right? So there's something about, yeah, we are influenced by the others in our environment. Also, companion planting is a really interesting thing. I did a little talk on this when I did my, top plants to grow in 2024, that basil and thyme improve neighboring plants' growth and health through repelling pests and increasing nutrient availability. So I have always grown basil and thyme and oregano together. They're really good at helping each other regulate the soil and keep pests away. And then a few other specific herbal medicine plant interactions that I thought were kind of neat is that peppermint improves growth of neighboring plants by repelling insects. So peppermint is going to come up and it's going to spread and it's going to help protect other plants so that they can grow. Chamomile promotes overall plant health and improves flavor through root exudates and VOCs. So I have a huge patch of chamomile in our garden. And the idea here is that the chamomile actually improves through its roots, these little root exudates, and through the VOCs through its leaves, the health and happiness of other plants around it. And that's kind of like when we talked about the lavender, right? And then garlic suppresses weed and pest growth, benefiting all plant communities and all the plants you plant around it. So, it's when we know the strength of a plant and we put it in the right place and we surround it with the right guests or friends, like that's what creates a thriving garden. And I think a lot of us, like for me as a longtime gardener, that it's something that I see it and I notice it through time. So, like there's certain mistakes I'm never going to make again. Like I'm never going to plant mugwort in a garden bed ever, ever. I did it once and that was enough. It takes over. There is no good that comes of that. However, I do know that my echinacea that I planted over here was dying. So I transplanted it over with the other echinaceas and now it came back to life. I know that in the early spring, when I plant my chamomile, when it starts to come up, I trample it with my feet and I stomp it down really good because I know from experience that that trampling actually makes the roots and makes the stems stronger. So they'll grow and have even more flowers in the spring, which they are right now. It's like bananas out there, how much chamomile I have. Um, yeah, and I know which, it's like you just start to see what plants are happy where and how do you increase the happiness of other plants. And now I'm thinking to myself, I need to get some. I do have St. John's wort in my garden, but I'm like, I need to get more of that because it's probably really helping the whole garden. I should put it in all the beds, right? So anyway, I just hope that was an interesting little bit of information for you, connecting the worlds of human dance experience and plant growth and dance experience. And I didn't say this, but plants do dance. I mean, they don't have ears and they don't move rhythmically to like beats, right? Like humans do. Like our heartbeat connects us like a drum to the music beat. And then but we have these limbs that we have full control over and muscles. But plants, they are affected by music. They are affected by vibration. And their movement is up, up, up. It's called growth. I wish I'm only 5'2", so I wish I could listen to music and grow like a plant. But no, my movement is out and around. Like I am moving my limbs. But the plants, their happiness and their health and their vitality is expressed with this upward pulsation of their life force, which equals increased growth. And we see it in all of these studies. So plants are dancing upward while we dance around and forward and backward. And I think that's really cool. I think it's really cool. And if anything else, I hope that today's talk inspires you to get into your body and to dance a little bit, however you want, wherever you want, with whoever you want, or with no one. But that getting into a space where you can connect your body to music and let go of worries, thoughts, stresses, and just let your body be a body is so deeply healing. And if you can do it with others, I think it amplifies that potential for healing too. So thank you for watching. I would love to hear your comments. Where do you like to dance? Do you ever play music to your plants? What do you notice? And I will see you all again next week. Have a good one.